On an ordinary afternoon in 2019, in the rainforest of Kibale National Park, Uganda, a chimpanzee named Basie was eating alone in a tree. At dusk, 13 chimpanzees arrived. They moved quietly through the understory, surrounding the tree. Without warning, they dragged Basie to the ground. In a coordinated assault, they beat him to death. These attackers were his former friends, chimps Basie had groomed, patrolled with, and hunted beside for years. This killing was one casualty in a sustained, multi-year chimpanzee civil war. The conflict completely overrode years of established cooperation, turning former allies into systematic hunters. The Ngogo chimpanzee community was a massive statistical anomaly. A typical wild chimpanzee group numbers around 50 individuals. This model shows how a group that large holds together. The community organized into distinct neighborhoods, but it relied on specific individuals known as bridges. These were highly social chimps whose relationships spanned across the different cliques, acting as the critical connective tissue linking the separate clusters. Between 2014 and 2017, the community suffered 3 rapid shocks: a cluster of unexplained deaths, a transition in alpha male leadership, and an outbreak of respiratory disease. These events systematically removed the specific bridging individuals in the center of the network. The network spatially separated. The newly formed Western faction began hunting their former friends, using the deep social bonds they had previously formed as tactical intelligence to locate and kill isolated individuals. Societies often degrade all at once rather than gradually. When a network loses its critical bridges, the system crosses a percolation threshold, a mathematical breaking point where the structure snaps and violently fractures. To understand why Ngogo broke, we have to look at what primates are biologically capable of processing. In the 1990s, evolutionary psychologist Robin Dunbar discovered a constraint on the primate brain. The size of the neocortex limits the number of stable social relationships an individual can maintain. This chart diagrams the layered architecture of primate closeness. You get about 5 intimates, 15 close friends, 50 good friends, and a maximum of 150 meaningful contacts. These bonds require immense cognitive effort to maintain. The Ngogo community, with its 200 members, had long exceeded that biological ceiling of 150. For years, bridge individuals had artificially compensated for this lack of processing capacity. It survives on borrowed time until enough pressure forces it to split. If we pull the lens back 900,000 years, Earth's glaciation cycles reorganized. Habitat shifted, and the resources our ancestors relied on collapsed. A 2023 genetic analysis using a method called FitCoal suggests the ancestral human breeding population collapsed to roughly 1,280 individuals. This would mean over 98% of our ancestors were lost. If we apply the Ngogo model to this period of stress, a social hypothesis emerges. The ancestral population likely splintered into fragments. The groups that lacked strong social bridges, the ones that couldn't maintain cooperation under scarcity, would have disappeared. This hypothesis suggests we are descendants of a localized fragment that survived because it maintained internal social cohesion, while the larger network around it failed. Modern social platforms gave bandwidth-limited primates access to infinite stimuli, but our neurobiology did not receive an upgrade. Algorithms densify our networks into ideological corners. Under stress, the primate brain protects its inner circle by blocking risky connections. The edges that disappear first are always the bridges. These severed connections mirror the exact structural fracture that caused the Ngogo Civil War. The digital echo chamber is the structural endpoint of primate biological limits, accelerated and frozen into place by algorithmic code. The chimps at Ngogo had no language to name their collapsing network. They couldn't recognize the pattern of their fracture. We can. Every choice to follow opposing viewpoints, to listen instead of argue, or ignore algorithmic outrage is a deliberate act. It is the act of preserving a structural edge. We run on vulnerable primate hardware, but our awareness of these constraints gives us the power to intervene. The bridges matter more than the clusters.